Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much for the welcome and a good opportunity to be talking today. I guess we started this morning with hearing from Sport England about current strategy. We've heard a little bit of the local government perspective. And when I was asked to come and think about what I might talk about today, I actually accepted just before we knew there was a general election on the 8th of June, but felt that actually once the election was called, it would be a good opportunity to perhaps think a little bit about what we want the next government to be doing to be supporting the sector. So that's really what I'm going to focus on for the next 15 minutes or so. I suspect many of the people in the room will, because you're here, because your interests, will actually think that sport and recreation is really important. You might not necessarily think it's really important in the election, but the likelihood of you thinking it's relevant will be greater than maybe most of the population voting on 8th of June. And as the CEO of an organisation whose raison d'etre is sport and recreation, of course, it's the most important thing in the world, isn't it? But I guess we're also not naive enough to think that everyone will agree with that and everyone will think about that, as I say, particularly in the context of the election. And I think there are lots of reasons why we think the election won't have much to do with sport and recreation. There seem to be lots of other relevant big topics about which are being talked about and which are dominating much of the airspace in the run-up to election day. And some of the reasons why are on the slide at the moment. But I guess my premise and the reason I'm raising and talking about this today is actually I think there are lots of reasons why we as a sector and we collectively should be making the case why sport and recreation can be relevant to the election and using the opportunity over the next few weeks to be talking about it and to be engaging politicians and people more widely in the importance of it and the role that it can play. And that's because of its potential as a policy tool, its potential to influence people, to engage people, and I guess in ways that people might think aren't directly. We talk about the election, we hear lots about the economy, we hear lots about social care, we hear lots about pressure on the NHS. Actually, we know that participating in sport and volunteering in sport and recreation can have enormous benefits. It improves our physical and mental well-being, it brings communities together, and it supports employment and economic growth. So it is relevant, and it should be something that we're talking about and seeing as a policy tool to help tackle some of these big challenges, whether they are obesity, social exclusion, or physical or mental health issues. And that's why our premise is that it should be the tool, a policy tool of the new government, and something that's important. Which is why at the Sport and Recreation Alliance we published a couple of weeks ago now our manifesto for sport and recreation. We wanted to be saying to the politicians what we felt they ought to be thinking about in the context of their own manifestos and getting the debate going. Although much has been said, and not always in a positive sense, about the use of the phrase strong and stable in the run-up to this election, I guess part of our premise is that actually the sports and recreation sector has undergone significant change in the last couple of years. If we think about the new direction under Sporting Future and some of what Mike's been talking about that Sport England are implementing. And actually, the sector's embraced that strategy, but it's still embracing that strategy, as we've heard. It's still early days in the implementation and the shift. And what we really want the next government to do is commit to the importance of joined-up government. It was a strand of Sporting Future, and I think we probably would say we've seen aspects of that coming out. But it's really important going forward that the future government make sure that decisions across all of government support the sector. So that means decisions about tax and health and education and land use planning, supporting the sector through funding. And I guess our biggest premise for this is saying that the scale of funding must genuinely match the scale of ambition. There's huge ambition for what the sport and recreation sector can do, and I guess some of that's articulated in Sport England strategy, and it's certainly articulated in Sporting Future. But we must make sure that the scale of funding is there to deliver it. If what was traditionally viewed as the sports sector is now being expected to deliver a whole range of public policy outcomes, then we must make sure that it's funded appropriately to do that, which includes funding from other government departments and not just from the Department for Culture, Media and Sport, because the sector cannot simply be expected to do more with less. And further, government policy must be inclusive. We must ensure that everyone, regardless of race, age, ability, economic background, gender, has the opportunity to take part and benefit from sport and recreation. And that must be a key tenet in all of its policies. So what we did in our manifesto was to identify 4 areas, and these, I guess, are the 4 areas from the Sport and Recreation Alliance point of view, are kind of new strategy areas of focus. And under each of these, we identified a couple of key asks that we wanted the next government to implement and to think about. So what I'm briefly going to just do is highlight what those key asks are, and again, hopefully demonstrate their relevance to many of the people in the room. And there are some Sport and Recreation Alliance members in the room who've inputted and helped to shape these asks, and I hope some of them will be more familiar to them. Firstly, we want to ensure that the economic and social value of sport and recreation is realised, and this is in 2 ways. Publishing an environment plan which protects and prioritises our natural assets, identifying how the economic, health and social value of outdoor recreation can be maximised across all areas of government policy. And at the Alliance earlier this year, we published a report called Reconomics Plus, which was all about the economic value of outdoor recreation. We did it in collaboration with Manchester Metropolitan University. And there's loads of evidence and stats in there about the value, not only to the economy, but through tourism, through health and social benefits of outdoor recreation, and really promoting that. This is something the current government have said that they'll do, that DEFRA have committed to publishing an environment plan. So if the current government come back, we want them to deliver on that plan. And if on the slight chance we get a different type of government, we want them to do it as well. Secondly, just before the election, many of you will have seen that Baroness Tanni Grape-Thompson published her Duty of Care review. This was another action that came out of Sporting Futures. She was asked to do a review by the Minister for Sport around duty of care. And in that, she made a recommendation particularly around something called the Mental Health Charter for Sport and Recreation, which is something that we at the Alliance launched in 2015 in collaboration with the mental health charity Mind and the Professional Players Federation. And this is all about recognising the benefits of sport and physical activity to mental well-being. She recommended that the charter is resourced and supported so that we can do more with it. When it was launched in March 2015, we had 25 signatories. There are now over 260 organisations that have pledged their support to the charter and are using it to help both break down some of the stigma associated with mental health and also be proactive in the work that they're doing within their own participant base. If you're interested in the charter, please go to our website and have a look if you're an organisation that's not yet signed up to it and want to get involved. But we want the next government to continue to put mental well-being at the forefront of what it does and recognise the contribution sport and recreation can make. Our second focus is around supporting and diversifying volunteering in sport. It's a huge area of focus. Again, I guess one of the things in Sporting Future was not just recognising participation as important, but also recognising both spectating live sport and volunteering in sport as valuable in themselves and not purely just to enable others to take part in sport. Everyone in the room will recognise the importance of volunteers. I'm sure, at the Alliance we have over 300 members, and from the very biggest to the very smallest, probably the one single thing that all of them have in common is the importance of volunteers. And that's why volunteers must be a key part of the strategy. We want the next government to introduce a workplace entitlement for public sector individuals to take volunteering leave, and with the potential to extend it to large private sector companies. If you think this sounds familiar, it's because it was actually a pledge in the 2015 Tory manifesto that they said that they would do. I guess that we haven't seen that implemented yet. Maybe a few things like that happen in manifestos, but we certainly want the Conservatives to put it back into their manifesto and actually implement it and do it. But also we want the other parties to recognise the importance of it as well. And why this is important, because it would give dedicated time to individuals to volunteer in their local community, including in volunteering and grassroots sport. And this reform benefits both the employer and the employee, and also makes vital skills available to organisations in the sports sector who really need their help. And we also want the next government to continue to invest in volunteering to encourage young people particularly to give back to sport and recreation. Sport England have committed £30 million investment in volunteering over the next 4 years. We want to make sure that that's protected and delivered on. And we want to make sure that the National Citizen Service, now that it's on a statutory footing, can provide a real opportunity to engage people in volunteering and in sport. And the scheme should partner with the widest variety of sports organisations to help ensure this is possible. There are already some examples of it doing that, working particularly with Football League and Premier League football clubs, but actually we think there's much more scope for it to engage with a wider variety of organisations. The third area is ensuring that children and young people are given the opportunity to be active. We've heard a lot about that already, the importance of it. And I guess as well as volunteering, it's one of the key things that whether or not organisations are actually offering sport or recreation directly to young people, whether they're doing that or not, we all have an interest in making sure young people grow up, firstly liking and enjoying and wanting to participate in sport and recreation. So our two asks here are firstly one which is about putting physical literacy on a par with numeracy and literacy in the national curriculum and in holding schools accountable for every child's physical development. We don't believe a child should leave primary school without reaching a basic minimum standard of physical literacy, and all children and young people should have access to high quality physical education, sport and physical activity opportunities. Schools should be held accountable through the existing assessment framework. And although we understand this is different to the current government's approach of not telling schools what to do, but letting good head teachers make good decisions, we think it's simply too important an issue for there to be an element of choice. We also know that many teachers would welcome more support from how to invest money, particularly the money that's being put in through the primary school premium. And anecdotally, we've heard reports that some teachers are worried about how they'll spend the extra money that's likely to come through the sugar tax levy. So actually making sure that schools are supported about how to use money and how to invest it in sport and recreation is really important. Our second ask is around making sure that the government, that the next government implement the commitments already set out last year in the Childhood Obesity Plan, including the investment from the soft drinks industry levy. And I think we've already seen the Labour Party commit in their manifesto to doing that. And we would hope that the Conservatives would similarly do the same when their manifesto is published, I think now due tomorrow, both to support physical activity in schools and also introduce the new healthy rating scheme for primary schools, which will help parents make informed decisions about how schools are using that activity. Our fourth area is focuses around the sport and recreation sector and recognising it's going through a lot of change itself. And one of our key roles at the Alliance is to help both our members and the wider sector become fit for the future, thinking about how it's operating, how it works. And one of the things that we want as part of this is to think about how we can ensure on getting more money back into grassroots sport. We know that the betting operators make a huge amount of money from sport. And earlier this year, we saw the horse race betting levy put on a new statutory footing, which sees a fair return coming back from those who make money out of the sector to reinvesting in the sport. And we want to start a conversation about how we can build on that principle from other sports, not just horse racing. So the levy, a proportion of the profits made by the gambling industry could come back into developing sport, including at the grassroots level. We also want the next government to require local authorities to maintain a register of sport and recreation assets and make it available to local communities so that we can help inform people about what's out there and how they can access local facilities. A new Green Spaces panel could have the responsibility for assessing any proposed development of school playing fields, parks and green spaces. There's already a playing fields panel that looks specifically at school playing fields, but we think there's scope for this to be wider, taking account of current and future local needs and having the power to reject or put conditions on development. So protecting the infrastructure, the natural infrastructure that we have in our communities that encourage and make it easy for people to get people active. So I'm conscious I've whistle-stopped through the 8 asks in our manifesto. The key thing, just to reiterate, I guess, is the importance of joined-up government and recognising the wider contribution that can make to a wide variety of agendas, but also recognising the responsibility that goes with that if the government wants it to deliver on a whole range of public policy outcomes, it needs to support that through a wide variety of funding streams and not just through the money coming to the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. I am happy to take any questions, either perhaps as Yvonne suggested at the end, but we'll be staying around afterwards. And please do follow up and have a look at our manifesto on our website. And if you want to get in touch, my details are there. Thank you very much.